Right, so Jeremy Corbyn's constituency Labour Party in Islington North, could they be about to be put into special measures? And if so, why? Well, as most of us who follow Labour Party politics know by now, Keir Starmer brought a motion to the Labour Party National Executive Committee, seconded by the party's campaign coordinator, the MP for Birmingham Ladywood Shabana Mahmood, which basically stated that Jeremy Corbyn could remain a Labour member, but would be anti-democratically barred from being allowed to be selected by his local members to be their Labour candidate for Parliament. He can stay a member, but he's not allowed to stand to be an MP. Now, any Labour member anywhere in the country can put themselves forward for selection to be an MP. But Keir Starmer has decided Jeremy Corbyn is literally the only Labour member in the country who isn't allowed to do so. Starmer clearly is terrified of him. This is a man he once called a friend. This is a man who, when he was running to be Labour leader, called out the appalling abuse Corbyn had aimed at him. But of course, as we well know all too well by now, that was to secure the lefty vote before he went about purging as many of those from the party as he could. Liar should be a word that runs through Starmer like a stick of rock, but this also presents him with a bit of a problem because by acting as he has, barring the man who has represented Islington North since 1983, and obviously having been selected each and every election since then by that local constituency party, by blocking Corbyn from being permitted to stand, he's also barred the entire constituency Labour Party of Islington North from being allowed to select him as their chosen candidate too. Well, North and Islington CLP isn't taking it lying down. They can pass motions as well, and they have just passed a rather cleverly worded one. Short, simple, but making no bones about how they as a CLP feel in light of the diktat by association that Starmer and his bullies have handed down to them. And the motion reads quite simply, this CLP would like to thank our sitting MP, Mr. J. Corbyn, for his commitment and service to the people and want to express that it should be our democratic right to select our MP. The motion passed overwhelmingly with 98% of those in attendance voting for it. The remaining 2% was literally one abstention, a single abstention as it worked out. Nobody voted against it. A simple thank you. Who can argue against that? But it's the rest of the motion, the subtext of it, that is pretty glaringly obvious, at least I think so. It should be our democratic right to select our MP, is what it says, which says to me that they have no intention of selecting somebody else. The motion against Corbyn bars North Islington CLP from selecting Corbyn, doesn't stop them selecting an alternative, yet this motion of theirs implies they're not going to do that. That isn't going to happen. I don't imagine this bothers Team Keith too much, as we saw going into the local elections. Candidates were being imposed by them all over the place. Left candidates were being removed. As far as parliamentary selections have gone, we've seen similarly. The socialist candidate for Broxtowe, for example, a chap called Greg Marshall, wasn't even longlisted despite having been the candidate on the previous several occasions. Instead, that CLP got presented with a choice imposed upon them of a mate of the local regional bigwig or two London-based Starmerites, including one Labour right-wing councillor who just lost her seat to the Green Party and had just failed to be selected elsewhere in High Peak in Derbyshire as their parliamentary candidate. Suddenly, laughably, they announced close ties to Broxtowe in Nottinghamshire instead. There really is no shortage of parachutes to strap on for some people desperate to become MPs for the sake of it, not out of any interest in serving local people. And they're absolutely the sort of people that are up Starmer's street if they're from the same faction as he is. We saw the same thing happen in Wakefield not all that long ago, where Starmer parachuted in a chap called Simon Lightwood, despite him also being a serial parachutee, having already tried to get selected as a parliamentary candidate in places like Loughborough in Leicestershire and Bradford West in Yorkshire, despite the fact he was based in Camden. The most blatant example was parachuting in virtually brand new Labour member Kim Ledbetter, getting parachuted in as the Labour candidate for Batley and Spen, using the fact she was the sister of the murdered former incumbent MP there, Joe Cox, to turn around what was, for Team Keith at that point, a pretty bad losing streak. So we know that if push comes to shove, Starmer will have no problem imposing a candidate on North Islington CLP. In fact, we already know of one potential candidate who has been sniffing around, a local councillor and a CEO of a chain of private health clinics called Praffle Nargan. But this is where that latter part of the North Islington motion comes with a bit of a warning too, within the subtext. It really was a cleverly worded motion, something that stood out to me when I read it, and this was, it should be our democratic right to select our MP. It doesn't exactly sound like they'd be too keen to campaign for somebody who was not their choice either, does it? We know that due to lack of support from ordinary members during the recent local elections around the country, that Starmer had ordered councillors out on the doorsteps to have those conversations, or else, basically, threats of deselections being held over them, allegedly. But whereas they are elected officials and they have a vested interest in their positions on various councils, CLPs are made up of ordinary members. Even the elected officers there are volunteers. They're just ordinary members who've chosen to go above and beyond for the sake of their party. Now, I used to be a CLP disability officer when I was in the Labour Party. I was a branch chair as well. I'm familiar with the structures. So what to do if a CLP basically refuses to cooperate in that case? Decides to be awkward instead? Well, we've seen Starmer deal with this as well. Newham CLP, also in London, got placed into special measures in 2020, and they have no idea to this day why. Special measures have been used by the Labour Party hierarchy over the years on numerous occasions. It's not a Starmerite thing, it's not particularly new. On numerous occasions to shut down anything functionally that the party leadership doesn't like them doing. Special measures and candidate impositions are not exclusively the preserve of constituency Labour parties either, local Labour parties. Starmer is actively right now doing the same thing in councils that Labour now control following the local elections. Birmingham City Council is the largest single council in the country and controlled by Labour as it is. Starmer and co have announced they are going to impose the council leader there to make sure they're one of his faction, not going to be awkward. The same thing has apparently happened in Sheffield City Council as well. Normally these things get decided at the Labour councillors' annual general meeting at the beginning of their terms, but Starmer has had it scrapped so he can impose his chosen appointee. So at the end of the day, Starmer and co have considerable form for imposing people. But no matter how dictatorial he wants to be in order to get his way, you cannot force people to campaign for, let alone vote for, somebody they didn't get to pick themselves. It isn't democracy, is it? Starmer has upset North Islington members considerably. That's probably putting it gently. He can impose his candidate, and I'm sure he will. But Corbyn has been given a considerable endorsement here by his Labour member colleagues, his local Labour members. He is defiant even now, saying he wants to remain their MP. But still, it isn't clear how he plans on proceeding with that. I'm guessing he's going to wait until after Starmer does parachute in another candidate, his replacement, before declaring himself an independent, or maybe he will start that party so many want him to. Who knows? Doing either will be the end of his Labour membership. Of course, there are those already laying all of this down because Starmer, Corbyn even, lives rent-free in their heads. Right-wing hack Lee Harpin, allegedly a hack in more than one sense of the word, as accusations of phone hacking whilst at the Mirror have been levelled against him, bleated out a tweet that the 98% endorsement came from just 60 constituency Labour Party members out of a constituency Labour Party of some 4,000 members, as North Islington is. However, the issue for Harpin, and it's one of truth, which is always generally, historically been an issue for him, is that North Islington CLP has a delegates-only structure. So only delegates, nominees from amongst that 4,000-strong membership, actually attend. So it's egg on face for him once again in his desperation. As the right-wing media's desperation is to keep on knocking Corbyn. It just redoubles the support those of us who admire the guy have, though. And as such, the ridiculous lengths Starmer is going to here are not helping Labour to be any more electable. It's only going to drag on him further. If Corbyn stands, North Islington will be the story of the 2024 general election. People will pour on the area to campaign for Corbyn from all across the country, and people equally, perhaps, will likely head to Holborn and St Pancras to campaign against Starmer himself in his seat, drive up support for the OCISA, the Organised Corbyn-Inspired Socialist Alliance, actively campaigning to get a candidate to stand against Starmer, which it's fair to say I think they'll get at some point. As for that potential Islington North candidate, the private health CEO, I covered him and his potential candidacy in another vid a little while ago, and if after you've liked, shared and subscribed, and why would you not? Come on, help a small lefty channel out here. You can watch that video next. I've posted a link to it just here. Go have a butchers of that one, stick with the channel some more, and I'll see you next time. Cheers, folks.